Hello everyone, my name is Vasyl Pekhno. I'm a Ukrainian journalist and I welcome all of you on this latest update on Ukrainian battle map situation review as of July the 28th. So please join and watch this video, like it. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave your comments below the video. So today we'll be talking about yet another, seems like, surge of Russian offensive all over the front line. This is really occurs like all over the front line. It strongly appears that kind of new phase of Russian offensive operation is beginning right now. And this is maybe the most astonishing thing that they are using as well, again, colossal amount of mechanized equipment in this offensive. A lot of people thought that we wouldn't see it again, but yet we see it again. But as for now, there's no result for Russians with using these mechanized units. So let's begin our overview and you will understand by yourself everything.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
The first thing worth mentioning is that the enemy has become extremely active and intensified their actions on all fronts. Right now, this trend of increased enemy activity is growing along the entire line of conflict. At the same time, the enemy is using a huge amount of mechanized equipment. Well, for this day and age, that's an enormous amount. And in a way, it's rather surprising because it seemed that mechanized equipment basically wouldn't be used anymore since it's being completely destroyed by drones. Just last week, while I was actually, it wasn't last week, but anyway, Madhya basically, last week, his quote appeared where he told Europeans that there isn't a single tank that a Ukrainian drone, an FPV drone costing at most $500 couldn't take apart. 100%, maybe it takes 1, 2, 3, or even 10 drones, but they will take it apart. They will find that weak spot in any tank in the world and it will be destroyed. So it seemed like there was no longer any point for the Russians to use them, but they still do because they're willing to take the losses and they lose absolutely all the equipment they attack with. It brings them no benefit at all, but the very fact remains, mechanized assaults have resumed on the front, and that's what we're going to talk about now. In particular, one of these large, massive mechanized assaults took place in the Siversk direction. Oh, by the way, friends, I forgot to ask you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, like the videos, and leave comments. Don't forget to also subscribe to my Telegram community, which you can see on your screen at @Pekhno_news, or you can find a direct link to my Telegram channel in the description of this video. By the way, I'm also about to post a huge, truly massive mechanized assault that just took place in the Siversk direction, literally. Right after this review, I'll be publishing it on my Telegram. So go ahead, friends, and watch the full video. This is exactly where the assault took place. It happened in two directions, in two areas, so to speak, from the side of Hayorivka and from the side of Verkhnyo Kamyanske towards Siversk. The Russians advanced in large columns. Here is that video. This was a joint effort by the 81st MOBI Brigade and the 54th Mechanized Brigade. Together, they repelled a large-scale mechanized assault by the enemy. In this assault, although I'm about to mention some numbers, it may seem that a year ago, the enemy used much larger amounts of equipment in their assault. But as of today, these are truly enormous numbers because, friends, we're talking about 6 tanks, 3 APCs, 6 MTLBs, an armored recovery vehicle, 14 cars, and 41 motorcycles. So basically, we can say there were 15 armored and lightly armored vehicles, so actually even 16 armored and lightly armored vehicles, 14 cars, and 41 motorcycles that the enemy used in this assault. Almost everything was destroyed or damaged. Yes, the enemy managed to break through quite deep, let's say, into the depth of our defenses. Here you can see these trucks, these long trucks that they followed while the drones were destroying them. But as of today, it is known that all these deep breakthroughs that the Russians tried to organize have been completely cleared and destroyed. The estimated enemy losses during this attack amount to about 50 KIA, that is 50 killed and about 70 occupiers wounded, meaning a total of minus 120 enemy personnel eliminated by the forces of our 54th and 81st brigades during this attempted breakthrough towards Siversk. Perhaps This was a major attempt to break through to Siversk, which has long been a thorn in the enemy side. And so they wanted to gain a foothold there. This assault was repelled. And even in those positions where the enemy managed to advance, I'll repeat once again, according to available information, they were cleared out, stopped, and there is no further advance. But the very fact remains, the enemy once again used mechanized units. This concerns not only the Siversk direction, but even near Pokrovsk. To reinforce the story that south of Pokrovsk, the Russians are already sending their sabotage groups into the city. Though through Zvirov, this time the Russians tried to break through towards Pokrovsk via Shevchenko. Strange. It's actually strange why they're not developing or trying to develop the direction through Zvirov, where their infantry is moving. But as reinforcement for this very sabotage operation through Shevchenko, the Russians also recently tried to break through the line held by the 155th Separate Mechanized Brigade, which is defending here, and this assault was repelled. For the first time in a long while, they used, I'll repeat it, again, heavy equipment to break through the defensive lines of our country's defense forces. Well, in fact, we are seeing footage of the 155th Brigade repelling this threat. In addition to this, besides Pokrovsk and Siversk, the enemy is now using equipment very actively in the Zaporizhzhia direction. Literally at the end of last week, I already showed these photos, so I won't repeat them. You can check out the Saturday review, the photographs from Petro Andriushchenko, the head of the Center for the Study of Occupation, who claims that he is showing photos from our resistance movement, indicating that the Russians have literally transferred a significant amount of their equipment from Berdyansk and Mariupol over the past week. They have moved convoys of up to 100 vehicles to the Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia directions. So recently, the Russians have actually reinforced themselves specifically with mechanized units, and they have strengthened their positions. They have carried out rotations on the main offensive directions. Therefore, the coming week promises to be extremely active in terms of operations. That is, this means Pokrovsk, it is likely to be Siversk as well. It's difficult to say if there will be active attacks in that direction. It's definitely Novopavlivka, as there's a possibility of advancing almost to the Zaporizhzhia region. In what context? Because the Novopavlivka direction, which is south of Pokrovsk, as I've already mentioned, there are areas here, particularly around Novopilia and Zeleny Pol, from which, if the Russians manage a breakthrough and succeed, they could actually threaten the rear of the Huliaipol and Zaporizhzhia directions. Accordingly, the enemy will be reinforcing here as well, intensifying the attacks in the near future. Both Zaporizhzhia and the Kharkiv region and the Kupyansk area, which we will get to shortly. Well, the only place where they consistently come up empty-handed as of today is in the Sumy region, because earlier deep state analysts, and as of last night, even the 225th Assault Regiment, have reported the official clearing and elimination of the enemy in Kindrativka, and among Russian propagandists, there is outright panic. There is such panic there. They are writing that their army was essentially destroyed right there in Kindrativka, Sumy region. If you read, well, at least really a number of Russian public pages are saying that it's a disaster and a catastrophe. For example, one of these posts is basically a compilation stating that Z channels are reporting heavy losses and the retreat of the Russian armed forces from Kondratovka. A week ago, TASS called the information about heavy losses among Russian soldiers during the assault on this settlement a Ukrainian fake. But now, not anymore. Now, for example, Alex Parker writes that the situation in the Sumy region is extremely difficult due to the lack of reserves, and that's always the case with Gerasim, as they call the chief of the general staff, Valery Gerasimov. That's always how it is with Gerasimov. Another Z channel, Belarusian Silovik, as you can see, writes that almost the entire personnel of the 30th Motorized Rifle Regiment of the Russian Federation in Kindrativka has been lost. Earlier, Deep State reported that the 225th Assault Regiment managed to destroy 3 battalions from different brigades in Kindrativka, the 30th Motorized Rifle Regiment, the 155th Marine Brigade, and the 40th Marine Brigade. So 3 of their battalions and 1 battalion commander were eliminated specifically in Kindrativka. So here, this is the only direction where the Russians, well, are not showing such intense, let's say, activity on the front. Although, in particular, if we talk about Yunakivka, the situation here is actually very difficult. Recently, we have observed both the enemy's advance and, frankly speaking, achieving any final stabilization or even improvement in terms of our counter-assault actions is for now not even close. But in all other directions, starting from the Zaporizhzhia region and ending with Kupyansk, Kharkiv region, even Kharkiv region, Vovchansk, in the end, by the way, Vovchansk. It's worth talking about it because recently there have been changes on the deep state map in the area of Vovchansk, specifically the Vovchansk hamlets. Although, God send you, dear viewers of the battle maps, also see that I reported on the situation regarding the enemy's advance in the area of the Vovchansk hamlets a good 2 or maybe even 3 weeks ago. Unfortunately, the situation here is unpleasant for us because the enemy has actually been putting pressure on this area. This area was in many ways not a priority for the command, firstly. And secondly, due to the same lies and false reports about holding positions, about the very possibility and necessity of holding positions here by one of the territorial defense brigades. I won't go into details, but well, I did report on this. Unfortunately, what we have in reality here is the loss of the forested area, and this is escalating the situation in the area of Vovchansk-Hutor. This, once again, stretches our forces along the entire northern Kharkiv direction, given that we have hotspots both on the border in Vovchansk and to the west of Vovchansk in the area where the Vovcha River crosses. And now the situation in Kupyansk has become much more complicated for us. But these 1, 2, 3, basically, the more such boys appear in our defense, the more they distract attention from the main direction, which is Kupyansk. It's Kupyansk. In this direction, the enemy's main focus is concentrated right here. And unfortunately, recently, Deep State, in particular, reported using their OSINT channels, the enemy's advance already practically on the northern outskirts of Kupyansk. This is happening, as you can see on the map in the image from Deep State, where the presence of this gray zone has spread to the northern outskirts of Kupyansk. This operation, in fact, has been going on for a very long time, the one involving the blockade of Kupyansk. But now, for perhaps the first time, the enemy has managed to reach the outskirts of the settlement. Although we did have some extremely puzzling and astonishing enemy breakthroughs that occurred last autumn, reaching all the way to Kupyansk itself. There, a rogue, let's say, armored vehicle managed to get in. But now the enemy has gotten closer and closer, because if we look at the Deep State map, we'll see that the situation around Kupyansk is extremely difficult in the sense that the enemy has advanced near Holubivka right up to these northern outskirts of Kupyansk. From the area of Radkivka, which was previously occupied, they have now pushed the gray zone up to Mern and are practically reaching right up to Sobolivka, which turns the control of Kupyansk into quite a complicated zone, in the sense that the Russians will continue to blockade this area in the future, and the logistics of such a large center as Kupyansk, when blocked, will definitely become more difficult. Although, of course, we do have at least some alternative routes for connection. We can see on the map that from Kupyansk-Uzlovy, there is a route leading toward Kupyansk, but these roads through Hushivka and Sobolivka is undoubtedly of great importance for Kupyansk. It is reassuring that on the left bank of the Oskil River, in the area of the same Petropavlivka and Pishan, we are managing to hold both this route and, in fact, our military groups continue to restrain the enemy here, who is not as active as, for example, on the right bank section of the Oskil River. That is, this indicates that the enemy, since they are not active on both banks at the same time, apparently does not have the resources to exert the same pressure from both sides. As of today, the Russians have focused primarily on the right bank of the Oskil, and unfortunately, we have to acknowledge that they have achieved some successes there. We can see these successes now on the map. We are seeing an expansion of Russian influence, and in fact, we can already observe Russian equipment on the northern outskirts of Kupyansk. As Deep State reports, the Russians are breaking through along the highway from Radkivka near the gas station, as well as from Holubivka towards the private sector, and are trying to establish a foothold. The enemy is operating along a wide front. The goal is obviously to stretch the defensive lines and block the. That's why this is one of those cherries on top that shows the enemy is now seriously ramping up the pace of their offensive on many sections of the Ukrainian front. And in particular, Kupyansk is one of the first but entirely predictable victims, because I've said dozens of times that after Donbass, the enemy's number 2 target, the main second objective, is Kupyansk. In my subjective opinion, and from the perspective of all the analysis I observe, since I've basically been reviewing the map from the very beginning of the full-scale invasion, What else is worth noting, friend? Kostyantynivka. This direction for us is also, well, not improving, to put it mildly. In the Kostyantynivka direction, the situation has once again somewhat worsened recently, particularly on the southwestern outskirts at the approaches to the city. We can see the area of Yablonivka has been captured, and we are almost on the verge of losing Alexandro Kalinove, meaning the enemy is pressing on Alexandro Kalinove while at the same time advancing toward the Kleban BYK reservoir. And in fact, they are doing this from two sides. The Kleban BYK reservoir is, well, essentially the last stronghold, you could say, before Kostyantynivka. In addition, the enemy has made gains in the area of the Livka, north of the Livka, in the Toretsk direction. Also, the enemy is putting pressure on our group in Chasiv, which has already been holding out for a very long time with all the strengths it has, as much as it can. But, well, I've just named at least 4 locations where the enemy has advanced recently and achieved these successes on the Kostyantynivka bridgehead. Accordingly, this is a full-scale combat operation that was launched quite some time ago near Kostyantynivka. It is still ongoing now. It will not be easy, it will not be quick, and it will not give the enemy any rapid advantages. It may well follow a path similar to the Kupyansk operation, which only now, after a year and a half, almost 2 years of fighting for it, has reached the outskirts of Kupyansk. However, unfortunately, when it comes to Kostyantynivka, there is a sense that this will happen much sooner than in 2 years. That's why, friends, we should pay attention to an important point regarding Drushkivka and the enemy's advance along the Kazeni-Torets River in this direction. Here, it's not even necessary to physically reach Drushkivka. It's enough to block the logistics of Kostyantynivka, which is directly and undoubtedly dependent on the Drushkivka area. Therefore, the general trend now is there is a strong sense that we have entered the second phase of the Russian offensive. Moreover, there is now information emerging that in the near future, July or August, fresh North Korean troops are expected to join the fight. So I can't say that there is no anxiety. There is definitely anxiety, but as of today, although we are losing ground with great difficulty, we are still managing to prevent a breakthrough by Russian forces on any section of the front. Although such local losses will occur, and this is an obvious situation that no matter how sad it is to admit, we clearly have to expect in the near future, which will last at least until September 2nd, if not longer. I don't believe that Putin will stop. There is absolutely no reason to think that Putin will stop. So, friends, we must not panic. On the one hand, not throw up our hands in despair, as the saying goes, thinking everything is lost. But once again, I urge everyone to give maximum support to our troops, no matter how banal this may sound to us. That's the situation at the front right now. Thank you for your attention. Take care of yourselves. Like the video and subscribe. Stay healthy. All the best.